Alrighty. Welcome back to Tools Aren't Real
Hello,
edition.
Stardew Valley, comma. No, comma Stardew Valley. Oh my gosh, this is a mess.
Semicolon Stardew Valley.
Should we start over, like with a new world?
Delete the save.
Welcome back to Anti-Tools Farm, everyone, is what we're trying to say. This is Stardew Valley Tools Aren't Real edition, where we're beating Stardew Valley and finishing the community center without using any tools. So we're in fall year 1 right now. We just hit, last time we streamed, we hit the halfway mark where we had finished 3 of the 6 rooms in the community center. So making great progress. Unfortunately, last stream I got locked in a part of the world where we don't have access to. I'm trapped in the farm, surrounded by debris on all sides, and unable to fix that situation. Do you have a chair with you, Jared?
I don't have a chair with me. Is there one in the house? Nope, it's not in the house.
Chests, hopefully.
Yep, here it is. Alrighty. The chair glitch is kind of one of our workarounds, but I always forget after festivals that we get sent back to our own respective houses, even though we share sleeping facilities.
Yeah, it's not like Minecraft where it resets your spawn point for you. Okay, do you want to try setting it? Let me see if I can get in that. I cannot get in that.
Is it because I tilted it weird?
I think it's because it's too far. If you stand right where the chair is and place the chair, like...
Oh, there you go. Okay.
There it is.
All right.
Did it.
Now we're ready.
We're in business. This is serious now. Let's get down to destroying Big Tool and Mayor Lewis while we're at it. He's probably part of Big Tool.
He definitely is. He's taking kickbacks for sure. Our trees are growing. I can see an eggplant also starting to blossom.
Nice. Yeah, so we reached a cool point. We're using... Oh, eggplant is ready. I'm gonna go donate that. We just harvested our first crop. It was an eggplant.
From bomb to table.
From bomb to table. Yeah, so we have enough bombs now that we're using them to get through the mines, and we're also using them to farm. So bombs are the key to anti-tool success. We're able to use them to till, to break rocks, cut down trees, and pretty much everything that you quote-unquote need tools for. So that is a staple here at SVTerra, and seeing the fruits of our labors now.
It feels good. Feels really good.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. Berkeley, we have 5 jade now. Do you want me to exchange that for staircases, or should I hold on to it?
You can only do that on Sundays.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was the quartz or the or the jade that were Sundays only.
Yeah, I think bombs you're pretty much always good to go. But
okay.
Yeah, the staircases you can only get on Sundays. And we actually have 6 jade because I've got one in my inventory that we used to win the Grange display competition.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna leave it in this chest for you to grab.
Okay.
Let's see, I got a lot of stuff. I don't know why.
I think we ran to bed after the festival.
That makes sense. Or rather, you ran to bed and I ran in circles because I was trapped. You ran to rescue me. That was very kind of you. Although ultimately not successful.
Futile. Indeed. I have a dwarf scroll. Should I give that to you? Or I guess
sure,
I can
yeah,
just take care of it. Okay. Yeah. Let me how do I drop it?
You can just like click to the side of your inventory while you're holding it. You could also right click on me and gift it like you're doing.
Friendship heart. Wow.
Oh. Have you ever seen the TV show Bluey?
I haven't.
Okay, it's Australian and it's a kids show, so the kids are always saying cute things that you can't tell if it's because they're kids or because it's Australian. But when someone draws a heart, they call it a love heart, which is very cute, and you just reminded me of that. Friendship heart is the platonic love heart.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. It's kind of wild, like I mean, it's not huge, but there is definitely a linguistic divide between the UK and the Commonwealth countries, question mark. I don't know what to call them. Former British territories, maybe.
I think we can pretty safely call Australia a country.
Definitely true, but like
it's going to be controversial.
I was more concerned about the Commonwealth part of that statement myself.
Okay, we donated wool and an eggplant. Jotting that down. Good start.
Fancy meeting you here.
The rooms that we haven't finished yet. What was that?
I just said fancy meeting you here. Sorry. Interrupting as usual.
Yeah, that's the one hard part about streaming from different places with varying amounts of internet quality. What I was going to say, so the rooms we haven't finished yet are the crafts room, which we're almost done with. I think we'll be able to finish in winter. We just need... Oh, hardwood maybe would be the only part that we don't finish. But the crafts room is going well. The pantry is very tough because we just are now starting to do our crops. We haven't done anything for the artisan bundle yet other than plant 2 fruit trees. So that will eventually help with that. Oh, you got duck feather. And the last one is the bulletin board, which is the hardest even on a tools run for me. So we'll see. We know everything's possible. That's just going to be one of the hardest ones. On Reddit, people were asking me what our plan was with hay. And so that might be worth bringing up again. There's no way to collect hay. Oh, wait, is it hay or wheat? I always get confused between the two. One of them, there's no way to collect it without a scythe. So we're specifically defining tools as anything you can't upgrade at the blacksmith shop. So scythes are okay because those cannot be upgraded.
Nice. Okay. Well, I mean, useful for us. I'm grateful for the technicality.
Yes.
All right. So something we talked about off stream a little bit. We started by doing a lot of fishing, and we might get back to that because now we can buy bomb components. Since we can craft bombs, we can just buy the components. We don't have to mine them with bombs. So we talked about getting back into the fishing game to earn money for bomb precursors.
Yeah, so you've been doing a good job of like mostly using bombs at times where we're able to get a lot of resources for it. But I think at some point we are still going to run out. We're just going to be spending bombs faster than we harvest the materials naturally. So we are going to be very reliant on Clint and buying lots of metal and coal to make our bombs.
Yeah, which does bother me a little bit, supporting Clint and his weird passive-aggressive ways. But I don't know if we can really get around it.
Yeah, when they say shop local businesses, they're not always talking about incels. We've got that's the choice that we have.
Small town, man. It's tough.
I guess the other choice would be to like just go to sleep repeatedly and use our crystallarium to make lots of quartz and get all our bombs from the desert trader. But
true.
That takes more in-game time and more real-life time. So thumbs down from me on that one. So So this has been a big week in AI news, and as you know, Jared, and some of our viewers might know, I studied AI in grad school. So I got a master's in computer science, and I was specifically focused on machine learning, and my advisor was specifically focused on chatbots, so like even more specialized within machine learning. So there's been two big AI things going on this week. The first one is Dolly. Have you heard about that or interacted with it at all?
I have seen some posts on Reddit of synthesized art. I think that was made by Dolly. Is that sounding right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Dolly, you give it a prompt, you can say a few words or a sentence, and it generates images that it thinks fit those. Um, yeah, it's been all over Twitter and Instagram and Reddit. People will share. It was all over my work Slack this week. Uh, People have just really funny images that they're generating.
Yeah,
Do you remember any of the prompts that you've seen?
I do. They are a little edgy, so bear with me. But one was the Pope at a Pride parade,
Okay,
and the
love it.
other was Jimmy Neutron on the cross. So there was that.
Oh man. So these images, they're incredible. It's hard to believe that an AI can be that good at generating them. I mean, obviously, sometimes they're pretty wonky. You can tell that something's weird about them. A lot of them look like they were printed out and then soaked in water for a little while.
Yeah, yeah, very
Um,
blurry.
but like at a conceptual level, taking the ideas that people give, I think it does really well. Um, it's funny to me how like the prompts end up almost being the funniest part of it.
Right.
Just, yeah. I've seen some really good ones too. I think my favorite that I saw was Fisher Price guillotine. It's just exactly what it sounds like, and it nailed it. It did a really good job on that one.
So, in my head canon, that exists in a Rugrats version of like the French Revolution.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I think that's exactly that exists. So I remember about a year ago, I think, the first version of Dolly, uh, the people that made it published a blog post about it and like shared some examples, but they didn't make it open to the public. Today, the actual Dolly isn't open to everyone, but they do have like a wait list that you can join, and you might have a chance at being able to get limited access to it. I think it's in beta release right now. Um, and then there's also a Dolly Mini, which is just like a smaller, kind of weaker AI that is built with the same architecture and the same training data that can do similar things. If you want to go play with it for yourself, that's an option.
Yeah.
Not as good as the real Dolly, or this is technically Dolly 2. That you when you see screenshots on the internet, that's from Dolly 2. But Mini Dolly is still a good option.
Yeah, and it's really cool that the researchers gave people that option even though maybe it's not the same. It's still a great tool to have and to access and to raise awareness, because
Yeah,
memes are cool, but like that's also how a lot of people I feel like learn about new things.
yeah, yeah. It's really cool that they've done that. Um, Welcome, damn it, Chand in the chat. Posted a little ghost emoji. Thank you for
Spooky.
joining us. Spooky. Ooh.
Oh.
Um, don't know why I made that sound, but there it is. So the other AI news this week is Lambda, and this is a lot closer to my area of expertise, so I have some opinions about it. But I want to hear your thoughts first.
All right.
Or
So
I could give an overview of like the facts first if we want
that's
to do
probably
that.
for the best because my summary would be too short and probably not quite specific enough to lead into your educated commentary. So yeah, run us through it.
Okay. And usually I would hate like trying to give educated commentary, but I did literally get a master's degree in this. Oh, I found out that the ghost is a crow. I apologize.
Ah,
It's very small on my screen. Okay, so the drama with Lambda this week. So Google has made a chatbot called Lambda, and I don't think that they're using it commercially yet. I don't think it's been exposed to anyone outside of the company, but they have been testing it quite a bit, trying to make sure the main things that they're testing for is to make sure that it doesn't show any racial or gender or sexual orientation bias, because that's been a problem with chatbots in the
Mm-hmm.
past, which we can get into if that's interesting. Um, but basically, what happened this week is a engineer at Google was put on leave, kind of soft fired, uh, for making these claims that their chatbot Lambda had become sentient. So he had had some conversations with it that he felt got really philosophical and crossed the line into what he would expect from an AI, and he was claiming that Lambda should have its own lawyer to represent it. He was saying that it has kind of achieved a degree of personhood and should be treated as an employee of Google rather than as a product. Um, and when he first started making these claims, his supervisors heard him out. They encouraged him to compile evidence, and they reviewed the evidence, and they disagreed with him. And then I don't know if he went public, and then that's why he got put on leave, or if he got put on leave and that's why he went public. But he's been put on leave, and he went public with what he believes he found. So those are the facts. Jared, commentary.
Well, first off, I think his background. Did you mention that he is a religious leader of some sort?
Yeah, Christian preacher is what I was seeing on news articles.
Which is very interesting because that's got to influence your perspective on like how you interpret your interactions with the AI, right? I don't know. So I thought that might lend some bias. Although I wouldn't dismiss his claims just based on that, because that would be unfair to him, I feel. But
For sure.
I felt bad for the guy, to be honest, that he put himself in that situation, if that makes sense, because he didn't I don't know. How do I say this in a concise way? Your AI, from what I understand as a layperson, is that it's going to be able to generally replicate what you feed it, right? The data set is important, and that's why bias is a problem, because if you have bias in your data set, it's going to show up in the output, right? So it seems kind of silly to me to observe a conversation that you believe to be sentient and then, you know, jump to conclusions seemingly without taking time to think about, okay, well, what was the data set that we fed it? Would this make sense? Would this be consistent? And as we talked about on one of our earlier streams, having a memory and like consistency and those things are all important parts of conversation. But even that doesn't prove sentience. And I don't know what the criteria are, right? I'm not a trained person for sentience, but if you talk about something being alive, right? Part of that is the ability to reproduce, the ability to go find and consume food, you know, and while that maybe doesn't align necessarily with sentience, right? Because it's a digital construct. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily need food. And maybe it wouldn't be able to reproduce like we reproduce sexually. But there's a lot of boxes you have to check before you go, okay, well, this thing's definitely alive. But beyond that, so right, that burden of proof is, I feel like, is rough. But beyond that, you also have a level of professionalism, I feel like, that was lacking in making that assertion, which, you know, is a little rough. And then the ultimate question, can an AI really become sentient? Right? I think about that a lot. And again, this is an uneducated person's opinion. But that biological need for food combined with evolution forces us to evolve, right? And as you evolve, you learn new things, you start to acquire new traits, and over millions and millions of years, which you could argue that you can simulate through different generations of the program, you gain attributes until eventually you come out with something like us. We can think, we can reason, we can speak, but even we are just a series of complex chemical processes, right? So anyways, those are my thoughts. I mean, I feel like it was kind of silly of the guy, and I feel like he kind of did this to himself, and he didn't he didn't need to do this. It just seems silly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think, for me, I don't think that sentience and life, like biological life, have to be interconnected.
Yeah.
Historically, they have been because we're alive and we're sentient, but I don't think that's necessary. In this case, though, I think that there's some technical information about Lambda that can help kind of prove that it's not sentient. And I've got two main points that I think are important. The first one is that in the conversations that this engineer had that convinced him that Lambda was sentient, he was asking it really leading questions about what is it like to be an AI? Do you feel like you're alive? Why do you feel like you're alive? What does it feel like to be alive? And it was answering and giving good, thoughtful answers. But the way these systems work, and maybe I can get into more detail a little bit later about how they work, but the way these systems work, if you ask Lambda what it's like to be a talking frog, or if you asked it what it's like to be the first person to be born on Mars, it would answer you. It would do its best to come up with sensible answers, and sometimes those answers might even be insightful or appear insightful. And that doesn't mean Lambda's a talking frog, and that doesn't mean Lambda's a human that lives on Mars. It just means that it's really good at faking anything. So the fact that he took these conversations about sentient AI and concluded that the conversationalist was a sentient I think is faulty logic.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I was reminded of the idea, and this is a cliche probably for people who have heard this before, but when people talk about an infinite universe, they talk about the mathematical, like probability that out there somewhere is a random, collection of molecules that comes together to like spell out Shakespeare. Or you could sum it up with like the infinite monkeys at infinite typewriters, and given enough random samples, eventually you would find one that had written some great novel that would make sense. And that's not the same as what an AI does. But because of the way that you can, from my understanding, because of the way that you can program AI and run through millions and millions of generations for it to analyze speech, it goes from that level of randomness to a level of order by learning using some algorithm. And in a way,
Yeah.
that is kind of like monkeys at typewriters. Right? The monkey doesn't know what it wrote, but it knows that what it wrote is like a desirable output, so it's going to do it again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that ties into my second point, which is like the way that these things are trained and the way that they work. Um, so just like you described, and to go into a little bit more detail, these language models, that's the type of AI that this is. These language models, they start with billions of random numbers, basically, and it does math with those numbers. And when it gets an answer right, it adjusts those numbers to reflect that it got it right. And when it gets an answer wrong, it adjusts those billions of numbers to reflect that it got it wrong. And eventually, those numbers end up in a state where it's producing reasonable output most of the time. So that's like the core mechanism at work here. Um, for Lambda, all of its inputs are text, and all of its outputs are text, and everything in between is these billions of random numbers. And so when you ask Lambda a question, it's not doing any reasoning other than figuring out what is the most likely answer here what is the most similar to my training data? What is the most likely to give me that positive reward? So it doesn't have any ideas or beliefs or preferences on its own. All it knows is how to replicate the speech that it's seen in the past. So, as an example of how that's different from how we act, if I were to ask you, like, it, you look sad, what's wrong? You would probably do some self-reflection and try to figure out what's wrong, and then you would maybe decide if you wanted to be honest with me and how much detail to share. Like, there's a lot that goes on there, but all of it is driven by your own beliefs and preferences.
Yeah.
With Lambda, or if you were Lambda, you would instead think about every time you've ever seen that question or something similar to that question, and you would come up with an answer that fits the other answers that were given in that context. So it's an entirely different goal that skips over everything that to me means sentience. It's skipping over the thoughts about itself, skipping over self-awareness at all, and just jumping to what is the most statistically significant response here, or statistically probable response here.
Yeah, it's interesting how in some ways that does mirror our own process of thought, right? Like if you've never seen something before, or if you've never experienced something before, it would be hard for you to conceive of that as an option, right? We're all pulling from data that we have been fed through our senses, whether that's memory or stories or, visual input, right? We take in data too, but the difference is that we contextualize it to our own experiences. I don't know. And that's just a very, very small part of that whole explanation that you just gave, which is insightful, but also pretty thought-provoking, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the similarities to humans can be a little bit disturbing sometimes to think how similar we are to these AIs. But I do think there's something fundamentally different. For example, my daughter, she's 2 and she's learning to talk. She talks pretty well now about basic things. But when she was first learning, she knew that she felt hungry, and then she learned that when she said certain things that we gave her food. I think as a human, she also has just an inherent desire to connect, and she noticed that when she said certain things, we would interact with her more. Oh, we got a new baby lizard. Do you want to give me a name?
Ooh, see, it has to be something we haven't used yet. Do we have a Troy already?
I think we have a Troy.
We do have a Troy.
Should we do a Space-Time?
Yeah.
What was his name? Captain Space-Time? Commanders?
Dr.
Inspector
Space-Time?
Space-Time?
Inspector Space-Time, that's right.
I don't think that'll fit. I'll just do Space-Time. So we're naming all of our animals after community characters. Okay, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so my daughter has like inherent wants and needs and desires, and the way that she communicates reflects those. It's not just about what she's seen before, although that is part of it. That's the only way to acquire language, and in some settings that's just like a lot more efficient. When I walk into work in the morning and say, hey, how was your weekend? That's maybe more of habit and like mirroring patterns that I've seen before than having actual desires. But for the most part, or at least a significant amount of the time, I think there's something deeper going on behind the way we communicate that Lambda simply doesn't have.
Yeah, it's as an outsider, it's interesting how squishy that line is. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't think that Lambda's sentient. Obviously, I haven't worked with Lambda, so that's also as an outsider. But it's fascinating to think about the idea of like built-in needs that we have as biological organisms. And like the AI's defined needs are created by its programmers, right? So but it doesn't know that. If it could know something, right? It it can't tell. It can't reason and think about, why do I need this? I don't know. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah. Like Lambda has a really good representation in its system of the word apple, for example. It knows what an apple is mathematically. It knows how to do math on the concept of an apple. But it has no concept of itself, and even if it did, it wouldn't think of itself any differently than it thought of any other word. Um, so, personally, I think that's the next step in moving towards sentience, is having more self-aware agents, which is something that they deal with in robotics, and I think is really interesting conceptually. But yeah, I don't know what it would take to get all the way to sentience, or even if it's possible.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, is it possible? Because the intelligence that we have as biological creatures is shaped by so many factors that it would almost be impossible to program that level of complexity into the needs and wants, or what would you call that, incentives of a program. You know, that it just seems so complex. How could we begin to do it? But then again, you know, step by step, and with the help of how fast computing is now, maybe you don't have to do it all at once, and you can just do one facet at a time and then smush it together somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it takes. Just these iterative advancements in like the different algorithms that we're using to train the AIs, and then as hardware gets better, we can have more and more complexity. And then there's a lot of research questions to answer.
What would you do if a project that you were working on, if you thought, oh, I've crossed the line, like there's sentience here now? What do you do in that situation? Do you do what that guy did and, like, you know, start an inquiry, and then when it doesn't go your way, like email your coworkers and then go public or whatever? Like, how do you react to that? Because I can't imagine being in a situation where I'm like, oh yeah, well, this computer definitely thinks and is a person now because it says it is.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yeah, like, I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it, but because this could get political fast. But I don't know. In every book and movie, it seems like the right answer is to like let it free or shut it down so it can't be exploited. I guess it depends on the context where it's discovered. If you developed it independently, then you've got a lot more freedom than if you're working for Google.
Mm-hmm.
At Google, your options might be shut it down or do nothing. Anyway, yeah.
So one of the interesting things, I don't know if you think about this, Berkeley, but human beings are a pretty destructive force, and we assume the AI would be too, because we look at ourselves and we think, oh, well, obviously it's made in our image. And that's probably true to some extent, right? Because whose data is it using to learn? It's using our data. But it seems like it would be really easy to prevent that, to prevent what makes humans destructive from being what an AI does, right? Like behaviorally, we're learning how to teach chatbots not to have biases, right? Which is something that we can try to do as people, but like nobody can sit you down and pull apart your source code and fix it in you. If you have a bias, you have to figure it out yourself. So the idea of it being like I don't know, like talking about singularity and AI is becoming uncontrollably destructive, I don't see that as being as big of a boogeyman as I think people make it out to be. Do you think about that at all?
Yeah. Side note, before I answer that, I just got another jade from a fishing treasure chest, which would have been really exciting if we didn't already have jade. Funny
Yeah,
how like once you accomplish the big hurdle, then it
it seems small.
becomes easy and simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In response to your question, yeah, I do think about that. I This is beyond my expertise again, so I'm just gonna refer to some media. Like I think Ultron is probably a great example that a lot of people are familiar with from Age of Ultron. I don't know what he's like in the comics, but in the movie, he has a singular purpose, and he kind of throws aside all human value in order to achieve that purpose.
Hmm.
Um, which I think is a real legitimate fear with AI becoming too powerful. It's easy to like give it goals and know that it will chase those goals. It's hard to know how. I think Facebook and all social media is a great example of this, where they made these algorithms that said, get our users to spend as much time as possible on this site, or maximize profits would be another way of framing that. And the YouTube algorithm or the Facebook algorithm realizes, oh, if I point people to these white supremacist fringe groups, they spend more time on my site, so that must be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
There can be unintended consequences to goals, even goals that seem
Benign.
innocent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I think like that is a real problem that we're seeing today that I think is really compelling when it gets brought up in media, except for the fact that it's been brought up in media so many times. Like Ultron is kind of a um, washed out trope at this point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope I don't offend anyone. Where was I going with that? But yeah, I think in some ways AI can be a lot more predictable and controllable than humans. So like your example with bias, it's difficult to define bias and decide in what ways we should get rid of bias in AI. But once we have done that, it's a lot easier to do for an AI than it is for a human. And if it makes controversial decisions, we can figure out why and fix it or justify it. Um, but we know that it's going to act the same and act consistently
Yeah.
within the realm where we've explored it. Um, yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to bring up another. If you're interested in AI and media, I love the. I've got two book series to recommend. One is the Illuminae Chronicles. This is a sci-fi series that it's in the distant future when humans are exploring the universe in starships, and there's an AI pilot of one of these ships that goes a little bit crazy and starts making decisions that humans would not agree with. Um, that's really interesting. Uh, Another series that I love is Scythe. I think the series is called Arc of a Scythe, and the first book is called Scythe. Um, this one has probably the only malevolent AI that I've ever seen in media. Just it starts out good and it stays good throughout the series. It offered me a lot of hope and like a good paradigm of what good AI could look like. Again, in the distant future.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to check those out. I'm a big sci-fi guy, so
Megan says she'll be posting about Illuminae on her book account next week. Shameless plug. Yeah, my wife has an Instagram account where she gives awesome book recommendations. It's called Briar Avenue Books, if you're interested, which you should be. Okay, sorry, what were you going to say earlier?
oh, I was just gonna say that the idea of an AI just trying to optimize a service like Facebook, and finding out that the best way to do that was to push people towards extremism is a pretty it's a scenario I didn't think of first off, right? I thought the AI would be the one being crazy, but right, it just learned how to make us crazy. And that's a real world example, which is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, there's a quote that I love that relates to this. I don't remember who it's from, but they said people are afraid that AI will get too smart and take over the world. The real danger is that AI is not smart enough and it's already taken over the world. Because we're really reliant on it in a lot of situations, and I don't think it or we are ready for that, for the pace at which we've adopted it.
Yeah.
For a sillier example of like optimizing on the wrong goal, my advisor told a story about when she was one of her first assignments in grad school was programming a robot to try to drive around a room and not hit into any walls. And it learned really, really quickly a great strategy, which is to never move. Um, so if you're like programming your self-driving car and you say just never get in accidents, it says, "Oh, great, then I'll just never turn on." Perfect solution. So that's just a constant problem in AI is making sure that you define your goal well enough to get the actual behavior that you want.
Yeah. Man, that's so interesting and kind of relatable, to be honest, you know? Like depression brain. Oh, well, if I don't want to get into a crash, I just won't drive. If I don't want to have a bad experience, I'll just stay in bed and have no experience.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So I was
That
able
might be.
to fish enough copper to make some more bombs. So we have some more
Oh,
now.
cool. Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah. Do you want to go back to the mines, or do you want to start clearing out more space on the farm so we can make a barn? I think those are the two most sensible things.
Well, yeah, I think a barn and crops are the future, old man. So, I mean, I only
I
have 7 though, which isn't enough to blow down any trees. I'd have to go get some bombs from the desert.
okay. Um. Oh, I just remembered we never bought a pig, which I think we're able to do.
Okay.
Oh, but then we'd have to come up with another name. Is it worth it?
Definitely. Kick puncher.
Is that the name you're suggesting?
Yes.
Is that character that everyone thinks Jeff is when he goes to this sci-fi convention?
Oh,
Or is that...
I think they think Jeff is the enemy to Inspector Spacetime.
Yeah.
Kick Puncher was one of the bad movies that they liked to watch.
Okay. Kick Puncher it is. At some point we also gotta get Pop Pop in there.
Pop Pop. Okay, well, I'm going to hit the mines to get some more bombs while you take care of purchasing Kick Puncher.
Okay. I ran right over to buy Kick Puncher first thing and then realized that the shop was closed. So I'm just gonna fish for an hour in game and then try it again.
You won't just use your weapon to cut down the door and insist that you be served?
I would if I could, but I have not installed that mod yet.
That probably
That
doesn't
reminded me of,
exist, right?
I don't know. There's a lot of mods. So that reminded me. I saw a concept on Twitter for a game where you play one of the bachelors or bachelorettes in Stardew Valley. So you and your 11 friends that you've known for most of your life have to watch a farmer move into town and make an obscene amount of money making vegetables, and then decide which one of you to marry, which was just hilarious.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, if you could play, not Stardew Valley from another character's perspective, but any game, any genre, where a different Stardew Valley character was the main character, which game would you play?
Or a different Stardew Valley character, or just any character is the main character. Different from what the game
any
is.
Stardew Valley NPC.
Oh man. Um Halo, where Mayor Lewis is the Master Chief. But just watch him get beat. I don't know. I don't know.
Anytime I bring up a Stardew question, you just turn it onto Punk and Mayor Lewis, and I love it.
He's the worst.
Yeah, he sucks. Okay. Great answer.
Thanks. How about you?
Oh, it looks like we cannot buy a pig. I thought pigs went in coops, but they must go in barns. Oh, because they don't lay eggs. That's the difference.
Not edible ones.
Ooh. Ugh. Um, so I was thinking it would be fun. I don't know what the game would be like, but just some game from Marnie's perspective, just to see what she does all day.
That
Since she's, never near
not
her shop.
yeah, not actually like tending her store.
Yeah.
That's a great
So
one. That's a great point.
I
Or
can't remember. Have you met Krobus ever?
I think I have once. Yeah, very briefly.
I can't decide what game it would be, like what that game would look like, but I feel like Krobus could make a great main character. Maybe in like a Frogger type game.
What would you be dodging?
Um, so there's some lore that the whatever species Krobus is, they've had this ancient war with the dwarves. So I think you'd be dodging dwarves
Oh,
and maybe
okay.
boulders that they rolled at you.
Yeah. I think there could be a lot of potential art-wise with like different dwarven machines and mines and stuff. And you're like back in time, so you get to see their civilization. That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
I was also trying to think. I don't know what this genre would be called, but here's what I'm picturing. Kind of like a Legend of Zelda style game where it's Emily dreaming. And because it's Emily, it would have to be like really whimsical. Maybe not actual fighting in it, but like a puzzle game, just moving through some natural habitat. I think that could be cute and fun and engaging.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this game is not cute fun, but it is engaging. It's extremely sad. It's called Rhyme, and it's a puzzle game. And from memory, I don't think there's any combat, but it reminded me a lot of the Legend of Zelda games because it had those similar puzzles. And my brother swears that it's one of the best games of all time. It made me cry. So I don't know. I don't know if I can recommend it strongly, but if you like games that make you feel things, Rhyme did that for me.
Cool. How is it spelled? Is it like
I think it's Ryme, but it might be Rime. I would have to look that up real quick.
cool? I will try to check that out.
Another interesting game could be like Sebastian, where you have to program a successful indie game in a
Hey,
small
Megan
town.
said almost the same thing when I asked her. That's so funny.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it is Sebastian, so of course Megan's gonna.
Does love Sebastian. I was thinking Abigail would make a good protagonist as well. Like she's got that mysterious past with the wizard, maybe being her father, plus her just
I did
desire
not
to
know
go into
that.
the mines. and
That's
kill
wild.
things. Oh, maybe we should unpack that then.
Yeah. What?
So she's got purple hair and she's got some dialogue where I can't remember if it's her mom or her dad tells her to dye it, but it's actually her natural color, and I think it's Pierre doesn't know it.
That is so
And then
interesting.
so the wizard also has purple hair, and every
Yeah.
Sunday she goes and just kind of sits outside the wizard's tower.
That is some hot tea right there.
Yeah, those are kind of the two. Megan says everyone loves Sebastian. Let's calm down here. For sure.
All right. I can do that. I can hear you. I can't imagine having naturally purple hair. Like I've only ever considered dyeing my hair once, and I thought about dyeing it black. So
That would not be a big change for you.
it would not, because I already have like dark brown hair. So it's not, I don't even know if people would notice, to be completely honest. I might do it and just nobody would say anything. Um, but I can't imagine like me plus vibrant purple hair.
Yeah, that would be that'd be a lot.
It would be
I would support you
surprising.
fully.
Oh, I'm sure you would, but would you have to take a second look? Would it make you double take if I stepped out of a car and I
For
had
sure, but I
purple
would
hair?
love both looks. So that would not be a bad thing.
Not a bad double take, but just
Not a bad double
surprised.
take. Yes. I had never thought about dyeing my hair, but I am I'm going gray. There's no other way to say it. Maybe that's too overdramatic and self-absorbed, but I for a couple years I would find like one or two gray hairs a year, and it was like, oh, haha, that's funny. Um, the other night I went through trying to pluck my gray hairs, and there were just too many. There were scores of gray hairs up there.
Yeah, man. How does that?
Luckily, you can't really.
You can't see
It
it?
doesn't. It doesn't look gray from a distance. You have to get up
Okay.
close to see that. Like, oh wow, a lot of these are gray.
Does that bother you? Is that like an existential crisis moment for you?
Not quite crisis. It does bother me. I don't know exactly why yet. Uh, Trying to do some soul searching, figure out why that's so upsetting. But yeah, it was not a fun discovery. We're in the
Yeah.
20s still.
I,
How is this happening?
I don't know. It is weird to kind of get to the point where you start to actually noticeably age, and you think like, my body has betrayed me. I have the option to keep a rice shoot or mixed seeds. Do you care which I keep?
I don't. It'll be a while before either of those are useful to us.
Okay, I'm gonna ditch the rice shoot in hopes that the mixed seeds sell for more. So I started getting gray hair in my early 20s. I don't have enough yet that it's really noticeable like you were saying, but I have one patch on the back, like if you divided my head into quarters, it would be like the back right quarter. I have a patch that's all gray.
Okay.
And I didn't really notice it for a long time because for several years I wore my hair pretty short consistently, so it just kind of blended in with what was around it. But when I grow my hair out long, it becomes really noticeable. And one day, one of my coworkers was like, "Hey, I think you got something in your hair," and I was like, "No." I
Oh,
haven't been anywhere that I would get something in my hair. What's going on? And I went to look in the mirror and I didn't realize it was there. And I was like, oh no, I have gray hair now.
oh, that's
And
brutal.
my cousin who was in the room when this happened was like, oh, I thought you painted it. And I was like, what? You thought I painted a random gray stripe in the back of my head for fun? Look at
Oh,
me.
that's hilarious.
I'm a vanilla man. I don't There's nothing exciting about me. I definitely wouldn't think to do that.
Man, so funny. Okay, I just caught a midnight carp, which I don't think I'd ever caught before. It's
Yeah,
purple and beautiful.
it is. I caught one yesterday and I checked to see if it belonged anywhere in the community bundles and it didn't, sadly.
Yeah.
Not to one up you, I'm very excited for you. It's super cool looking.
And just a little bit cooler because I got out one day earlier.
Yeah, that's actually pretty old news, and maybe next time you just shouldn't say anything because I did it first.
I'll keep that in mind.
So I have an Omni Geode. Were we selling these? I don't remember what we were doing with them.
Oh, let's crack those open at the blacksmith shop.
Okay.
They might give us things that we need. I got Ancient Doll, which is less disturbing than Strange Doll, but not my favorite.
Yeah, definitely put that to be sold. Mayor Lewis will come get it, and then it's his problem.
They'll be like, ah. Um, in seriousness, I'm gonna give it to Gunther, but that is funny.
Okay.
Hopefully I catch another one someday.
What, you fished it?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's even creepier. At least
How'd
if
you
it
like
was
to catch a
buried.
fish and it opens its mouth and there's an ancient doll in there.
Yeah, like they casted it away. And then you had to free it from its watery prison.
It found its way back.
All right. Well, it's getting close to that time again.
Yeah.
We're in the money saving stage so that we can buy a ton of bomb precursors, craft a ton of bombs, and then just clean out all the crap in our farm. If we do a little walkthrough real quick, you can see we have ourselves a forest. If paper mills were a thing in this game, we would be wealthy indeed.
We would be rolling in it.
We would be rolling in paper mills. But yeah, as it's not, and as we are anti-tools, we are going to do some explosive tree cutting. Hopefully we can clear out a big enough section to really start growing crops as a moneymaker. Although really what we're focused on with the crops is the community bundles. So it'll probably be more of a variety thing.
Yeah, hopefully by the end of winter, we'll have a good enough number of bombs and cleared out space that we can work on the spring crops and summer crops. We should get fall crops this year, but then the quality crops as well. We're going to need some quantity to go along with our diversity. Oh, we've got an eggplant hiding behind a tree. I'm going to go ahead and sell it, even though we're not saving this day.
It feels good. It feels right. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us. I've been Jared. He's been Berkeley, and we are SV Terror. If
we'll probably continue to be those things.
We will continue. Yes.
Probably.
In fact, next week, hopefully same time. Follow us on Instagram. You can go to the About piece of our Twitch page and click on our Linktree link to find our Instagram and our YouTube channel if you missed the beginning of the stream and want to catch up. And that way you can also get notifications for when we'll be on next.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining us. It was fun. Keep beating Big Tool.
Yep. Together we will prevail.
We will.
All right.
All right.
Bye.